Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Shedd. Welcome to Accessibility Now, a podcast where we talk about disability rights and advocacy in the state of Georgia. My guest today is Mr. Victor McCrae, the Housing Policy Coordinator for the Statewide Independent Living Council of Georgia. Victor, thanks so much for joining us.
I appreciate the invitation, my friend. Thank you.
It's always good to hear about what's going on in housing policy in the state so we can know where to speak up and let our voices be heard and understand where the needs are and where the victories are too. On that note, can you just paint a picture of the current state of housing for people with disabilities in Georgia right now?
That is a very good question, and it's something that the state has been putting a big focus on recently. They understand that affordable housing is one of the driving forces to get not only keeping Georgians happy, but as well as having new individuals come to the states and be participants in the community. So that has been one of their big focuses. They have been putting a lot of money into LIHTC recently. DCA, the Department of Community Affairs, has also been doing a lot of information, letting people know about the housing choice voucher programs. They just had a conference about a month back where they were going over that, and I believe they're opening it back up here pretty soon. So a lot of Georgians, not just in the disability community, but just individuals who need those vouchers to get by, they're going to be very happy soon, from what I hear. Again, those wait lists are here and there, so something to keep your eye out for. It depends on, again, which county you are in, how long it'll be open for. But yeah, all in all, housing is never a perfect situation. You're never going to be able to get 100% of people happy, but it is one of the main focuses of Georgia comparatively to other states, even in the South, let alone nationally. So that is something that we can be proud of. LIHTC funded housing. That's government subsidies, works with developers to make affordable housing, usually multifamily complexes that serve as many people as possible. Usually about, if I'm not mistaken, 80 to 90 are awarded every year, at least when it comes to the 9%. But yeah, that's government subsidies, housing that they have to keep at a certain threshold, and they have to make sure that a certain number of those units are always affordable. The situations like that developments like that are great for individuals who might be on SSI, have a fixed income, things that are, problems that a lot of Georgians are facing recently, especially with the amount of individuals who do claim to have a disability.
And you said there's quite a waiting list for that.
So when it comes to that, I mean, it's just
That's just like a
first come, first serve. You gotta keep your ear to the ground, for a lack of a better term, for situations like I always recommend. If you're looking for portable housing, you can't go wrong with Georgia Housing Search. Type that into Google. I would say it's similar to sites like Zillow. You're going to be able to find housing near you. They do put focus on being able to filter out for affordability. Again, in those situations, it's always good to double check. In today's day and time, there are scammers out there. They will put up posts for your dream house, and it looks too good for the fantastic price. Probably is. So it's always good to be conservative in those times to double check, pull it up on Google Maps. But all in all, Georgia Housing Search is a wonderful, wonderful site. Allows people to find affordable housing in their area.
Great. And then the other piece that you mentioned was the housing choice. Say that one more time.
The housing choice vouchers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are vouchers provided by DCA that are subsidized by the government, that pays for a portion of your rent. So yes, it's a long application process, but once you have it, it allows for individuals who need the assistance to have the government pay for a portion. Of course, you need to find a landlord or renter or apartment complex that accepts them. But once they do, basically you are paying a certain percentage out of your own pocket, and the government picks up the bill on the back end for the rest of it.
Yeah, that's obviously important. And do people usually find that it's adequate in terms of the amount that it provides, or is there usually
from my experience, it's night and day. People are allowed to substantially save the money that they need to provide for their families, from my experience. It's been a year or two since I really looked into it, so I'm not going to specifically say numbers. Be excited for anyone interested in affordable housing here in Georgia, housing choice vouchers is usually the first thing that gets brought up. And so it's very easy to find information on it. GCA has very comprehensive information. So I do recommend typing that in to your search bar.
Okay, great. And that's the one where the waiting list is pretty
Depending
significant.
on where you are, yes,
Okay.
it can be a little bit of time. So yeah, it's again, that is dependent upon where you are located in Georgia. So keep that in mind. You might be one of the lucky ones. So it's never wrong to look into it. It's free to ask.
Absolutely. When you think about those particular issues or those particular pieces that we have in Georgia in place, and this might be beyond your scope since you're focused on Georgia, but do you have any sense of how Georgia's doing relative to other states and the nation at large?
Kind of what I said earlier on, I do think Georgia is putting on a large focus, especially since, from my knowledge, Georgia isn't really, for lack of a better term, losing constituents. A lot of states out there they're moving. They're trying to find affordable housing. And at the end of the day, there are sections in Georgia where it's tough to find affordable housing, but comparatively to some states, we are doing fantastic. We are making it a priority. And that's why people are moving in and coming to Georgia and Tennessee and other states like that who have put a focus on that. Nationally, I think we are ahead of the game, though there's always room for improvements. Like I said earlier, nothing in housing is perfect. You're never going to make everyone happy. If you can shorten that goal line and make a large majority of individuals, or at least give them the opportunity to grab affordable housing, then that's the best we can do at the end of the day. And I'm very proud of our legislators at the state level who are making sure that's happening.
That's great. That's great to hear. And like you said, there's always room for improvement and for ways that we can move the ball forward. But it's good to note that we've secured some accommodations for folks. So, when given that landscape of where we are right now, when you hear from people with housing issues, what are the things that come up most often?
Oftentimes people are just need to get pointed in the right direction. We, at the end of the day, are an advocacy agency. When we get calls, we want to hear everyone's stories and we want to bring those to legislators. We usually, if they're looking for specific services, introduce them to our centers for independent living throughout the states. They are 9. So if you are interested in figuring out who is the center that's closest to you, go to our website, silcga.org, and go to Find My SIL, CIL, and there has a comprehensive map of the state of Georgia with the centers that are around you. So those are boots on the ground. Those are the services. Each center is independently run. Some centers have entertainment. Some centers focus on different programs, pointing people in the right direction for housing. All the centers have access to the home access program, which I'm very proud of. But yeah, when it comes to what consumers that are reaching out to our office are asking, they just need to point in the right direction and to find affordable housing. Because yes, we do have a lot of options, but it can be pretty daunting when you're jumping into the space and you might be on a time limit. Individuals might be couch surfing and they need to find something that is going to put a roof over their head in a day or two. Have a different timeline than someone who is moving out of mom and dad's house in a couple months. In situations like that, options are obviously going to be more limited since they need to find something sooner rather than later. So we do our best to point them in the right direction. Oftentimes, I let them know Georgia Housing Search again, as well as to look up things like LIHTC funded developments around you. Because again, they need to have a certain number to be affordable.
Absolutely. When people are, I imagine this comes up sometimes that people are in the spot where they're trying to make a decision. Do I try and push or find the resources or maybe even push for a landlord, if that's the case, to help make my space more accessible through renovations, whatever they may be, which is what the home access program helps with, not landlords so much as I understand it, but people who own their own homes. Do people push to make those accommodations or to try and make those improvements, or do they just try to relocate to find a place that's more accommodating?
That's a very good question. And I'm going to go with an out here. It's very dependent upon the situation. Reasonable accommodations, those obviously have to be met. When you are asking for landlords to reasonably build you an $8,000 ramp right in front of your house, that is a tougher sell. And they could definitely say that's not a reasonable accommodation. It is a whole new structure to the household. Your landlord might be a very nice woman or man, totally jump on the project for the future growth of their own property. That's up to them at the end of the day. In situations like that, oftentimes you do have to relook. It's just the name of the game. This is what I was telling people at a conference I was recently. Disability could strike at any time. If individuals out there who are born with disabilities, they understand kind of the rules. Things aren't always totally fair. And that's what I've learned with my own visual impairment. But individuals could be walking one day and fracture their hip, and they are now in a motorized chair for the rest of their life. Situations like that where you are completely ambulatory and now you need to build a ramp. Things like that can pop up at any time. It's tough when, you are in a place that might not be accessible, and that's totally fine for someone who doesn't need it until they do. So yeah, oftentimes individuals do have to move, and it's a shame, but what is out there that we already have, ADA laws from 91 have standardized a lot of things, have given the disability community many more options than they previously did. So if you're renting a spot that isn't currently as accessible as it could be, is it reasonable to ask them to completely refurbish the bathroom for roll-in shower? Probably not. At the end of the day, there's many more options out there that already does have that, which we can't be proud of.
That's helpful to know. And it's like you said, it's nobody's immune from being a person with disability. And in fact, as is often said, if you're lucky to live long enough, you will be a person with a disability.
Very true. I think the last I saw, it was a 2022 statistic. So again, the data isn't as fresh as it could be. But I think it's 13.5% of individuals in Georgia said they had a disability. That is a large minority of individuals, and it's fairly close to what it looks to be at a federal level. So yeah, oftentimes disability can strike at any time. And for those of us who already have them, it's always good to lend out a helping hand and to try our best to inform individuals who come to this matter surprisingly. At least that's my own personal point.
Yeah, absolutely. And along those lines, have you come across developers / landlords that see this as, given the number that you just cited of 13%? Was that what it was? 13% of people? Yeah. So given those numbers, which are higher than I would have expected, are there people that kind of see this as an opportunity, even like from a fiscal sense of, we could grow our business by providing resources or accessibility for people with disabilities?
Certainly. It's funny you mentioned that. Not too long ago, I was down in Savannah on the panel for the National Affordable Housing Coalition. That they have a conference down there once a year. And this panel was called a Pathway to Accessibility. So on that panel, we had an ADA compliance officer. We had a developer, someone who was high up in developments here in Georgia, specifically LIHTC funding. We had a representative from DCA when it comes to how things need to be built. And I had the opportunity to be on the panel to give a voice for the disability community. During that panel, we're talking obviously about compliance. It was on the compliance track down there. So individuals had very technical questions, but also we were instilling into them the importance of accessibility. We are getting to a time where a lot of the generation from the baby boomers are facing late 60s, early 70s, some late 70s. And the older you get, the more likely it is you're not going to be as ambulatory. The more older you get, your vision is going to start to go. That's just a fact of life. With such a large majority of the population, or I guess minority of the population aging out, disabilities are going to be more common. It's just how the cookie is going to crumble here. And it was very interesting to have a developer, Chris Bird, who's one of our great friends over at LDG, was on the panel, and his company, LDG Development, has made a big priority about going above and beyond what is required for ADA, at least when it comes to the amount of units that are completely accessible. They've gone above and beyond percentage that they need to hit and made sure that there's additional units in most of their new projects. They've also ensured that all of the units out of some of their new projects like Phoenix Station, like Agape Way here in the Decatur area, are able to be easily transferable to an accessible unit. So if someone were to come in and need an accessible unit and they were fresh out, they could get those reasonable accommodations, easily transfer one of their units to be accessible. And I think that's way of the future. It's a lot, they made a big note about this during the meeting. It's a lot cheaper for developers to plan accessibility from the start of a project than it is to realize that they have to check all these boxes at the end. If something isn't a specific incline percentage for a ramp on the way up to the development and they've already laid down the concrete, guess what? The compliance officer is going to come in and they're going to tell them to tear it all down. That was one of the examples used during the meeting. The developer who's already spent millions and millions of dollars on this project isn't going to want to come and spend $20K completely rehashing work they've already done just because they didn't do it right the first time. Situations like that, developers are being very cognizant of accessibility when they are starting new projects, or at least that's what I've seen recently.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I've heard the same thing, the same principle applied to web development too, where it's if your organization's building a website, thinking about accessibility from the beginning is much easier than trying to do it piecemeal after the fact.
Build it in, yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's more regulations now about compliance along those lines for web development too, which is encouraging to see. Yeah, that's a note of hope for the future. And as I understand it, you gave a presentation also recently at Disability Link centered around advocacy and prepping people to go to our state capitol to advocate. So for people that are in a situation or just that are interested in advocating for those who are, that is unsustainable, they're in a position that is not sustainable for them. What are some of the guidelines or information that you shared in that presentation that would be helpful to them?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, that was a good event right there. We partnered with one of our centers, Disability Link, focus on the metro area. And we had the opportunity to do basically a training day before we actually went to the Capitol as a group. A lot of these consumers and individuals with disabilities had never talked to their legislators before. And that's a state that I feel like a lot of not even Georgians, but Americans are in a similar situation. So we were basically tearing down some of the misconceptions and tearing down some of the fear that might be there to be talking to a legislator. And yeah, we were able to have a fantastic event that day. Some of the things that I did pass along to the individuals that were there that day. The first thing is legislators do want to talk to their constituents. They want to hear the voices of the individuals that are voting for them. They want to be able to correctly represent the people that they oversee. That is a little tougher when you're trying to get a specific bill passed and the person that you need to talk to is the appropriations chairman, and he or she may not be technically over your county. Oftentimes, legislators, they'll have their staffers inquire, you're trying to set up a meeting on their website. You're inquiring, hey, I'd like to meet with this individual, and they ask, which county you live in? And then you tell them, and they say, you're not in the representative county. So in situations like that, I was telling Disability Link, there's different ways you can advocate. You can advocate for yourself as an individual and talk to the legislators that are directly over your area. Or you can advocate as agency or an organization. If you need to talk to that person, go speak with the different nonprofits in your area or in the area that they're overseeing. Disability Link, for example, they oversee 10 counties, maybe a few more. They are able to, as organization, group together and meet with many more legislators, whereas they'll ask which county you're in. Our organization oversees this county. Prime example there of you being able to get in the door talk to the people that you need to talk to. At the end of the day, though, all the legislators that I have met and interacted with, not only at a state level, but also at a national level, they are very nice. Do want to hear our voices. And that's the thing. Oftentimes, the disability community is, if not underrepresented, underheard. And we have to take the time and ensure if I don't want to do it, then how can I expect someone else to do it? If sending a letter is the maximum you can do, send a letter. I know for a fact those staffers read them and they do bring them to the legislators. If you can make your way to the Capitol, make your way to the Capitol. Look it up. Who's your legislator? You could type that into the Georgia General Assembly website, georgiageneralassembly.org, and it'll have the access to find who your specific legislator is. They will have an office in your community. You can set up a meeting to meet them at the Capitol, or when they're back in their hometown, you can set up a meeting to meet them in person. So if you're not trekking all the way to the metro area, if you are in South Georgia or if you are in Northwest Georgia. So a lot of that talk during that specific day was just to break down some barriers that might be built up in people's minds about getting into advocating.
Absolutely. Such an important topic. And like you said, I think a lot of times, at least with the legislators, like you just cited, it doesn't seem like it's not out of a willful ignorance of what's going on. It's just this information isn't always front and center for them. And so letting our voices be heard as advocates is really important.
Very much.
Keeping those issues in front, and not just one time, also keeping those issues front and center, because as we know, people have to put out fire. So sometimes you got to make a fire to get some attention. Anyways, thank you so much for sharing that. And I guess my final question would be, if you could change one thing about housing policy for people with disabilities in Georgia, what would that be?
That's a fantastic question. At the end of the day, money talks. More money was allocated to doing more renovations for accessible housing. If more grants were allocated, if more money went to housing choice vouchers with a focus on individuals with disabilities, all those things could be very helpful. Again, that money has to come from somewhere, and that money, and that somewhere is the taxpayer. I think as of right now, Georgia is striking a very good balance with focusing on housing without completely taking more from the taxpayer. But at the end of the day, we want to see problems solved. We want to see more individuals who need accessible and affordable housing. And it's just going to come down to the money at the end of the day. We can make new departments. We can make new ministries, for lack of a better term, to focus on these issues. But the answer at the end of the day is going to be, it's going to appear from somewhere. So if I could make a suggestion, it'd be more financing going to LIHTC funded, more financing going into the housing choice voucher program. Those things, they're not perfect, but they are the best I've seen out there at a national level to focus on these issues. And if you have better knowledge, better information than I do about other programs in different states, feel free to reach out to the statewide Independent Living Council. You can talk to me, email me. We'd be happy to learn more about what other states are doing. When we meet with our legislators, we can inform them of different options, because it's never bad to have more information. At least that's my opinion. From when I've talked to a bunch of our legislators, I think they do share that same opinion.
That's great. And if you don't mind, if you're good with it, I might provide your email in the show notes so that people can reach out. And also, like you mentioned before, it's a great idea to point people to the website where on the SILCGA.org, where we have the Centers for Independent Living mapped out so people can know that. But also feel free to reach out to our office and we can help make that introduction to your center. Yeah, I think that wraps it up. Unless, is there anything that you wanted to say that we didn't get to in our conversation?
I think we covered a lot of it, and I've been very happy. I'll leave it on a positive note. I do think that Georgia's doing a very good job as things go. I think we can come together as a community, let them know. Oftentimes these legislators, they only hear the bad things. If you want to take the time in your day, say, hey, I do live in accessible and affordable housing. Please feel free to let your legislator know that they could go with a pick me up if you're only so inclined.
That's great. All right. Thanks so much, Victor. It was really great getting to talk with you as always. And it's always good to hear an update on how things are going in Georgia and resources that are available to folks. So appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, my friend. I look forward to the next one.
All right. Great.